from around here, are you?
You really are some kind of Martian or something, aren't you?
Do no harm. Jenny Hayden.
What the hell is that thing? Welcome to planet Earth.
Jeff Bridges is Starman, next Saturday, 7:45, on 1.
Tonight on Saturday Night Clive, I'll be asking this man, Colonel Oliver North, why he keeps calling interviewers by their first name.
Clive, I never at any stage call any interviewer by their first name. But Clive, you look doubtful. Clive, would I lie to you? Clive, what's the matter with you?
Now it's 9:15, time for the news and sport with Martin Lewis and David Davis.
A bag of weapons is found in a London street. The hunt is on for IRA terrorists. A follow-up search of lock-up garages uncovers explosives and bomb-making equipment. And the Conservative chairman claims a tactical victory as European plans for a maximum 48-hour working week are put on ice. Good evening. An off-duty police constable is believed to have foiled a possible terrorist attack. He challenged a man acting suspiciously in the northeast London suburb of Wanstead. The man ran off, leaving behind a bag of weapons. A search of the nearby area uncovered a quantity of Semtex explosive and bomb-making equipment. The anti-terrorist squad think the man may be linked with recent IRA attacks.
According to Scotland Yard, the off-duty policeman spotted the man acting suspiciously and was approaching him when he dropped the bag he was carrying. It contained a number of guns. The man made off across some woods, and the anti-terrorist branch were immediately called in. Their follow-up search took them to a row of lock-up garages nearby, where explosives and bomb-making equipment were found. The police are convinced the man was a member of an IRA cell, who may well have been collecting material from the cache to rendezvous with others and go and plant a bomb. One theory being considered is that he may have been the third member of the IRA gang, the bodyguard perhaps, which tried to kill members of the Blues and Royals band in St Albans 2 weeks ago. That attack ended in disaster for the terrorists when the two bombers, Patricia Black and Frank Ryan, were killed by their own device. It was the latest in a number of setbacks for the IRA in England. Patricia Black was buried in Belfast yesterday, and Frank Ryan's remains were returned to the province tonight for a funeral within the next few days. Scotland Yard suspect the IRA intended to stage an attack on the mainland last night to show they still have the capacity to strike here. A big anti-terrorist operation is continuing across London tonight, although the police are giving few details. From what they have disclosed, it appears that a piece of quick thinking from an observant policeman may well have saved lives.
The Conservative Party chairman Chris Patten says the government won what it sees as a tactical victory over the proposed European Social Charter. It's understood the proposals for a 48-hour working week and restricted Sunday working have been shelved for the time being. The government believes they would lead to job losses. An opinion poll for tomorrow's Sunday Times suggests that Labour has a 2% lead over the Conservatives. The Mori poll gives the Tories 40%, Labour 42%, the Liberal Democrats 15%, the Greens 1%, and others 2%. The survey has a margin of error of plus or minus 2%. 5 of the 6 most recent opinion polls have given Labour a 1 or 2% lead.
Mr Patten told the Conservative Students' Conference that if Neil Kinnock were conducting the Maastricht negotiations, he'd be surrendering everything to the rest of Europe. John Major would only sign a deal if it was in Britain's interests. And on the separate negotiations over the working week, he suggested Britain had now got enough support to put off for the time being proposals for a 48-hour ceiling.
I think we've got understanding among our European colleagues of the powerful argument that we've been putting forward. Some of the propositions we've been arguing against have been the sort of policies which did so much damage to Britain in the 1960s and 70s.
Labour said ministers were being obstructive for purely political reasons.
Instead of trying to appease their own right wing,
the government should agree the general principles of the social charter, the levelling up of employment standards across the community, and then debate constructively the detail, which is what all other 11 EEC countries are doing.
The Employment Secretary, Michael Howard, said it wouldn't be a failure for Britain if no agreement was reached at Maastricht. But the Foreign Office Minister, Tristan Garel-Jones, said he didn't think that would happen, although he said Britain still wasn't happy with several parts of the treaty, including attempts to increase Europe's power over social policy. Britain does appear to be winning significant points in the pre-summit meetings. There's another important one tomorrow between John Major and the Dutch Prime Minister, who's a strong supporter of a federal Europe. But ministers know they'll have to make concessions too, and they're prepared for the summit talks to go on well into the night if necessary to reach agreement.
The British government has long made it clear that it could not accept a maximum 48-hour working week. The plan was opposed too by British industry, which argued that it would add to costs and hamper efficiency.
Day and night, 9,000 loaves an hour stream off this production line. The Mother's Pride bakery in East London depends on overtime. On average, workers do a 56-hour week. That's 8 hours more than the European Commission believes they should. Management say it's none of Brussels' business.
In the area of labour negotiations and the area of working time, we think that ourselves as employers and the Bakers Union and the other unions representing parts of our workforce are quite capable and able to sort out what is best for the UK bread industry, as we've demonstrated over years past and can do in the future. This kind of legislation isn't really helpful.
The shift workers in the British tradition have a relatively low basic pay rate. Some can triple their money on overtime. If the maximum hours rule was introduced, they'd have to take a pay cut, while 20% more people would need to be recruited. Earlier this month, in his Guildhall speech, the Prime Minister warned that the Working Time Directive could cost British industry £5 billion.
It is not in the interests of Europe, and we cannot allow the community to extend its power to burden business with unnecessary proposals.
Employment ministers from all community countries are due to reconvene next Tuesday to discuss the 48-hour week, but there seems no likelihood now of it being put to a vote. That'll come as a relief to employers in all industries, including steel making, which depend on continuous production. But the proposal hasn't been killed off entirely, only put off for the time being.
It's been revealed that only the prompt action of a junior doctor saved the lives of the 2 policemen who were stabbed yesterday in South London. In an earlier incident in North East London, a police sergeant was killed. 2 men are now being questioned about the 2 attacks. The Home Secretary praised the bravery of all 3 officers when he visited the wounded men in hospital.
The 2 policemen both underwent 4 hours of emergency surgery at the Mayday Hospital in South London after yesterday's horrifying attack. Police Constable John Jenkinson suffered stab wounds to his face, neck and chest, requiring more than 50 stitches. PC Simon Castrie's life was only saved when a doctor clamped a severed artery with his finger and held it there for 3 hours. The Home Secretary Kenneth Baker visited the policemen this morning and praised their bravery.
These men were very courageous indeed, as was Sergeant Alan King, who tragically was stabbed and was killed in his course of duty.
Police investigating yesterday's murder of Sergeant King have confirmed that a 28-year-old man has been arrested in Essex. He's now being questioned in Edmonton. So too is another man in connection with the incident in Thornton Heath.
Boris Yeltsin says the Russian Republic is prepared to pay all Soviet state salaries until the end of the year. The Russian president made his offer after attending a crisis meeting at the Kremlin to discuss the Soviet state bank's announcement that it had run out of money.
The immediate crisis over who will pay the wages of millions of Soviet state employees has been resolved. The Russian President, Boris Yeltsin, announced after today's crisis talks that he had agreed to bail the central government out.
Russia takes upon itself the entire responsibility for paying wages in the army, science, culture and other central organizations. We guarantee that they'll get their wages.
Mr. Yeltsin's price for this apparent generosity was Mr. Gorbachev's agreement to prune back his spending plans. It was the refusal of Mr. Yeltsin's supporters in the Soviet parliament to finance these plans that precipitated the crisis. On Thursday, they blocked massive new loans, which their spokesman described as a blank check for government overspending.
The point is that the centre is a monster that gobbles up huge amounts of money, and we in the republics don't get any benefit from it.
The most important outcome of today's talks may be the agreement to combine the Soviet and Russian budgets. This will give Mr. Yeltsin effective control over not just his own spending plans, but those of the other 11 Soviet republics, which were not even represented at today's meeting. But Mr. Yeltsin's control of the country's finances has not solved the immediate shortage of cash. From Monday, Russian banks have been ordered to stop paying out money from savings accounts. The state is effectively seizing ordinary people's assets in order to have enough cash in hand to pay the wages. Angus Roxburgh, BBC News, Moscow.
President Gorbachev has told President Bush in a telephone call that Ukrainian independence would spell disaster for the Republic and for the Soviet Union. His remarks were reported by the Soviet news agency TASS. Tomorrow's referendum in the Ukraine is
continues. Jaws the Revenge, next Saturday, 7:45, BBC One.
On BBC Two in 10 minutes, the first of two Roman Polanski moving pictures is a timber-shivering 17th century adventure on the high seas, with Walter Matthau as a marooned buccaneer rescued from the brink of cannibalism and certain indigestion in Pirates.
After the news on Saturday Night Clive, Ben Elton will be facing Frank Bruno for the title of fastest man to be defeated by Frank Bruno.
I expect to win the title within seconds of the opening bell of the first round.
See Ben Elton as the man who was not ready to meet Frank Bruno after the news.
This is BBC One. It's 9:45.
Iraq frees the jailed British businessman Ian Richter. Britain unfreezes Iraqi assets in this country. His wife celebrates his release from 5 years in prison. He's flying home tomorrow. The UN envoy Cyrus Vance arranges another ceasefire in Yugoslavia and says this time it must be genuine. Good evening. The release of the businessman Ian Richter, imprisoned in Iraq for 5 years, was announced in Baghdad by the United Nations Special Envoy Prince Sadruddin Aga Khan. In return, the government has unlocked £70 million of Iraqi assets frozen in British banks since the Gulf War. It will be used to buy food and medicine for Saddam Hussein's sanction-hit country. The Prime Minister said he was delighted at the news and looked forward to welcoming Ian Richter home. Peter Gould reports.
At the family home, Shirley Richter was still trying to take in the news when the phone rang. It was her husband.
It's just absolutely wonderful. I can't believe it.
What have you heard? What's the latest?
Well, I'm still waiting for confirmation, and whilst I was waiting for confirmation, the phone rang, and it was Ian. He's at the Rashid Hotel in Baghdad with Prince Sadruddin, and he just sounded terribly, thoroughly relieved and excited to be coming home.
What did he say to you? What did he say?
Oh, we just babbled away. I can't even remember. I was shaking like a leaf.
The United Nations Special Envoy, Prince Sadruddin Aga Khan, had repeatedly called on Iraq to set Mr. Richter free.
Well, it's very good news indeed, and it's another feather in the cap, I think, of the United Nations, because Prince Sadruddin has succeeded where many of us had failed in the past to try and get Ian Richter released.
Ian Richter was arrested in 1986 and accused of bribery, a charge he's always denied. But after a brief court hearing, he was jailed for life. Shirley Richter visited Baghdad several times to see him in jail and to plead for his release. But for several anxious weeks during the Gulf War, no one knew if he'd survived the bombing of Baghdad. Then in June, the release of Douglas Brand, the British engineer jailed for allegedly spying, raised hopes that Mr. Richter's release would follow. And today, friends and neighbours shared the family's delight.
I can't believe it. I mean, I was so excited because we waited so long for this to happen. I mean, you know, we sort of lived through this with Shirley and Ian for 5-6 years, you know, and it's just unbelievable.
We've waited so long, and I think that, you know, the whole of the parish
has felt with him, and also, of course, very much with Shirley and the children, the lack of his company, the lack of his presence.
Mr. Richter was given just 5 minutes to pack his belongings before his release. He's lost weight in jail, but says that otherwise he's in good shape. Back home, the champagne is on ice, yellow roses are being delivered by the dozen, and the family's reaction can be summed up in a single word.
Shock! I've got to go and see my mum. What about now? I'm terribly excited. I just want to see my mum.
And tonight, after a phone call from the Prime Minister, the whole family toasted the freedom of the husband and father who tomorrow they will welcome home.
Well, just over an hour ago, I spoke to Ian Richter on the phone from Baghdad, and I asked him how it felt to be free.
Well, it's quite wonderful. It's difficult really to express just how wonderful it is. Out of those four walls and in a hotel and with pleasant people and having discussions on worldly affairs and other affairs, it's just lovely.
How were you treated by your captors?
Well, in the last year or so, I've been treated remarkably well.
Were you tortured?
Really, I don't want to get into the early days, you know. I don't think it's productive now. I just want to look forward to a happy future.
Did you ever give up hope that you would be free again?
I don't think I ever lost hope entirely. I think Shirley, my wife, is responsible for that. She's been such a positive person, and she's given such great support, and she's been so loyal that I really owed it to her to keep going.
Your wife told us earlier that she was so excited by your first phone call today that she can't remember what you said. What did you say?
I just remember that we were both emotional, and I remember her telling me that she'd booked a skiing holiday and that I'd now join it, and I really look forward to that. And I think we both wondered about collecting our children from all various parts of England.
What is it about Britain that you're most looking forward to returning to?
Well, I think there's that aspect of democracy in Britain which is very hard to find elsewhere. We complain about this and that, but we do stand up for our rights, and there is this feeling of freedom in Britain which is wonderful, and I think that I look forward to more than anything else.
In unfreezing millions of pounds of Iraqi assets, Britain becomes the first Western nation to do so since the invasion of Kuwait.
It's the pressures of the sanctions on the people of Iraq that has led to the deal that's freed Ian Richter. Now the Iraqi government can buy supplies to deal with some of those problems. 5 months ago, the UN ruled that frozen Iraqi assets could be released to spend on humanitarian supplies. That meant that there was at last something to bargain against the release of Ian Richter, and the talking started.
There's been exchanges of messages between us and the Iraqis via various intermediaries, given that we have no interest in Baghdad.
The Iraqis now have access to the first of their funds overseas to be unfrozen, and feel too that improved relations may result.
I hope that the British government will take this decision from the Iraqi government as to strengthen the relations between our two governments, and we are looking forward for better relations.
Saddam Hussein will have decided to release Ian Richter, and this illustrates that he is capable of compromise. He's seized an opportunity to start spending money without relenting on his decision not to release oil for supervised sale, and in Iraqi eyes thus allow outside interference in Iraq's internal affairs.
A new ceasefire has been signed by the warring factions in Yugoslavia after their talks in Geneva. It's the 14th since civil war began in June. But the United Nations envoy, Cyrus Vance, who announced that it would come into effect tomorrow, said that this would not be just another meaningless declaration.
There have been so many last chances for peace, and once again the leaders of the warring parties were meeting on neutral ground. President Tudjman for Croatia and President Milosevic with the Federal Defense Minister for Serbia and the Army. 13 earlier ceasefires had been agreed to, and 13 ceasefires had failed. Mr. Vance emerged from the talks to announce the 14th.
The three Yugoslav participants signed an agreement which provides for the immediate lifting by Croatia of its blockade of Yugoslav army barracks, the immediate withdrawal from Croatia of the blockaded personnel and their equipment, and most important of all, a ceasefire which will come into effect tomorrow.
But as all sides have learned, it is one thing to agree on a ceasefire, another to make it work. The test this time is whether the Federal Army and Serbian irregulars halt their advance on Osijek. The provincial capital is taken to be the next target after the fall of Vukovar. The artillery bombardment there has already intensified, with heavy damage and 77 people injured in the past 24 hours. There's a real question whether the leaders, especially on the Serbian side, can control the forces acting in their name. If they don't, this ceasefire will go the way of all the others. If they do, then plans can be laid for the introduction of a UN peacekeeping force. It may actually work, but from the war zones, the agreement looks a bit like the triumph of hope over experience. Martin Bell, BBC News, Belgrade.
Mrs. Thatcher has been warned she could lose the Conservatives the next election. Sir Norman Fowler has fiercely criticised her campaign for a referendum on the issue of a single European currency. He deplored her comment that it was arrogant and wrong to deny people the opportunity of a referendum. But an opinion poll for tomorrow's Sunday Times suggests a majority of people support Mrs. Thatcher's view. The poll was held yesterday and today, with over 1,100 people taking part. 56% of people said they were in favour of a referendum, while 32% were against, and 12% didn't know. Our political correspondent, Martin Dowell, reports.
Mrs. Thatcher's call for a referendum and her subsequent remark that Mr. Major's refusal to hold one on a single currency was arrogant and wrong has led senior Conservatives to take the gloves off. Sir Norman Fowler, for years a loyal cabinet colleague, argued her continued attacks could have serious electoral consequences for the Conservatives.
Had Ted Heath given that sort of interview, she would have been absolutely furious. So yes, I do think there is a risk that she will put at risk the whole general election.
Other senior Tories accused Mrs. Thatcher of breathtaking arrogance herself.
John Major was her choice. She told us to vote for him. I think that now she should just look back and realise that she's no longer in the position of power she was before.
I asked myself, has she finally flipped under the pressure? Because she always rigorously opposed a referendum, particularly in 1975, all the way through, precisely because it would undermine parliamentary sovereignty.
But one admirer in the government defended her right to speak out.
I don't think anyone expects her to do anything else. I don't think anyone expects her to be anything other than a forthright advocate of the things she believes in.
With Mr. Major at a sensitive point in the talks on European Union, the opposition maintained that the Tories' disarray had weakened his negotiating hand.
When he has to spend more time negotiating with Mrs. Thatcher and Mr. Tebbit than with Chancellor Kohl and President Mitterrand, it is indeed a tragedy for Britain that our case is not being properly put in Europe.
What Mrs. Thatcher has done is massively reduce Mr. Major's bargaining power to get Britain's best interests in the European debate.
Mr. Major's declining to make any public comment, but there's a strong feeling among some ministers that Mrs. Thatcher is now rapidly losing her influence inside the Conservative Party.
Firebombs have badly damaged 2 stores in the centre of Belfast. Thousands of pounds worth of Christmas stock was destroyed as the bombs exploded early this morning. A branch of Burton's was also firebombed in what police say is a pre-Christmas terror campaign. Meanwhile, in West Belfast, a man and a woman have been arrested after the discovery of an arms catch. The Russian President, Mr. Boris Yeltsin, has left Germany after getting a mixed response to his efforts to gain help for the Russian economy. His visit was marked by a cooler welcome than those accorded to President Gorbachev on similar visits.
At the villa in Potsdam, near Berlin, where Stalin and the Allies carved up Germany in 1945, there was a warm welcome today for a new leader, Boris Yeltsin, president of a nation reborn. He talked of Russia and Eastern Germany as surviving communism and now battling to get over the sickness. But it's been an uphill struggle for Mr. Yeltsin to win German investment. Business leaders question his reforms and worry about his country's future, its military upheaval, with a huge force here still to be withdrawn. With the headquarters here of the Soviet army in Germany still in command of well over 250,000 troops, the collapse of Soviet central power raises worrying questions about who back in Moscow is ultimately in charge of all these soldiers, and who, most important of all, will get them home. The troops themselves gave a clear answer to that tonight. Russian flags were in evidence in what are supposed to be Soviet ranks, as Boris Yeltsin looked every inch the eager inheritor of Moscow's power. The German foreign minister looked rather uncomfortable beside him. Though Mr. Yeltsin stressed again that Russia would only form its own army if other republics did, the scenes here tonight give the opposite impression. David Schuckman, BBC News, at the Soviet Army headquarters in Germany.
Now, with news of the day's sport, here's David Davis.
Manchester United are back on top of the First Division. At Old Trafford this afternoon, they took advantage of Leeds having a day off to overtake them with a 2-1 win over West Ham. It was a game that lived up to expectations, played in front of United's biggest crowd of the season.
The fans that regularly fill Old Trafford have their own capacity for patience. 25 years since the club last won the Championship, its chances this season are perceived as better than ever. Today, against West Ham, United gave its followers genuine cause for hope, especially in the first half as they dominated, entertained and scored one of their goals of the season through 17-year-old Ryan Giggs. He's not the new George Best, but a marvellous prospect entirely in his own right, as he showed just before half-time with a back heel to set up a second simple goal for Brian Robson, who this evening is denying reports that he's joining Gary Lineker in Japan. United might have won by 4 goals for all their chances, but Hughes isn't scoring as he might, and in the closing stages there was nearly an expensive price to pay. A quickly taken free kick let in McAvenny for 2-1. Later, he almost got his side a draw. United go back to the top, but still the goals aren't flowing.
Frustrating is the word. Because the supporters are really looking for a barrage of goals, and they deserved it today, you know, because some of the football deserved that. But as I say, sometimes you've got to dispel the scoreline. It's just a reminder to us that we'll have to start killing teams off, really.
The talk as the fans left was of Best, Law and Charlton, and how they'd have scored 5 or 6. Still, this is definitely Old Trafford's happy weekend. The club's parent company has just announced record profits of over £5 million and has 14 million in the bank.
Elsewhere, it was a day of disappointment for the clubs chasing Manchester United and Leeds. Despite another Niall Quinn goal, Manchester City were held to a draw by the bottom club, Luton. Teddy Sheringham scored twice for Nottingham Forest as Crystal Palace were overwhelmed at the City Ground. Steve Bold got Arsenal's equaliser at Sheffield Wednesday, who'd led at half-time. At the other end of the table, Brian Deane scored the goal that gave Sheffield United their first away win of the season at Tottenham. So at the top, Manchester United are 2 points clear of Leeds, who play at Aston Villa tomorrow. Norwich needed a last-minute winner to beat Coventry 3-2. In Scotland, well, John Robertson got the only goal as Hearts won at Dundee United. As a result, with Rangers losing to St Mirren, Hearts now lead the Premier Division by 3 points. Celtic won 3-0 at Airdrie. Aberdeen lost at Hibernian. The big spenders, Leeds, are through to the third round Rugby League's Regal Trophy after a 12-4 away win over Hull. After Hull had taken an early lead and held on to it without much difficulty, Leeds surprisingly drew level thanks to Gary Diverty's determination. In the second half, another solo effort, this time from Gary Schofield, secured Leeds' victory. After picking up a loose ball, he was left with a 90-yard sprint. Hull, who'd again dominated the play, couldn't catch him. Final score, Hull 4, Leeds 12. National Hunt Racing's most successful combination, trainer Martin Pipe and jockey Peter Scudamore, have won the most important steeplechase of the season so far, the Hennessy Gold Cup. At Newbury this afternoon, Chatham came home a 10-1 winner. Coming to the last, Scudamore and Chatham had a clear lead over party politics. Peter O'Sullivan's the commentator.
Racing into the closing stages, and Chatham is holding party politics with Docklands Express third. It's Chatham the leader from party politics and Docklands Express, and that's how they're going to finish in the 1991 Hennessy. At the line, Chatham is the winner, and party politics is second, and third is Docklands Express.
Finally, a lost portrait of Shakespeare by Thomas Gainsborough has been discovered beneath the painting of one of the artist's acknowledged masterpieces. An X-ray photograph of the canvas has revealed a painting which Gainsborough didn't think was good enough to put on show.
The Queen's Pictures Show at the National Gallery has provided the first opportunity for her Gainsborough to be X-rayed. Dr. Martin Postle had been on the trail of the artist's lost Shakespeare portrait, described in his letters, for 6 years. An obscure handbook from the 20s hinted it might be lurking beneath the glossy surface of Gainsborough's portrait of his son-in-law. X-ray photographs proved him right, and a painstaking montage showed Gainsborough had chosen to paint over a masterpiece.
Without a doubt, had this picture survived, it would be regarded as amongst the most, if not the most important Gainsborough. What we have here is Shakespeare looking up towards the heavens, gesturing with quill in hand for divine inspiration.
The detailed paintwork will never be seen, because the portrait on top is itself one of Gainsborough's finest. But the X-ray hints at an altogether more passionate work, with Shakespeare poised between comedy below and the sketchy figure of tragedy on the left. Since it was set up, the National Gallery's X-ray department has discovered a lost Goya portrait, an extra fisherman in a Constable landscape, and has exposed numerous fig leaves to be later additions to originally naked figures. But the lost image of Shakespeare is the most exciting discovery so far. Gainsborough agonized for years over the painting, finally deciding he was too dissatisfied to show it.
That's the BBC News Tonight. Good night.
Hello. Now this wriggly weather front will spread wind and rain across many northern and western parts of Britain in the next 24 hours and then across the whole country on Monday, but a lot of dry weather tomorrow. You can see that rain on the radar getting more persistent at the moment in western parts of Ireland. The rest of the country still more or less dry. The computer brings that rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland and just gets it into western parts of England and Wales by the end of the afternoon. The rest of us, though, broken cloud, some bright weather to come. Some drizzle in the southeast at the moment at first, and one or two fog patches forming in the south, but farther west, windier, with outbreaks of rain in many parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland during the course of the night. A fairly mild night. It won't feel mild in the west, but really quite chilly in the east. 4 Celsius and just 39 degrees Fahrenheit, but no frost anywhere. Tomorrow, England and Wales and southeast Scotland, mostly a dry day. Some spots of drizzle to start with. A very different picture for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Gale force winds in places and quite a bit of thick cloud and outbreaks of quite heavy rain at times. Hill fog as well, and some like getting into southern Scotland and western parts of England and Wales by the end of the day. Quite a chilly day too, windier than it's been in the east over England and Wales. It will feel cooler, and with those strong winds in the west, not feeling at all mild. That's it for me.
In Everyman tomorrow, a woman with expert knowledge of the depths of man's inhumanity to woman asks, do men hate women?
Women have been stereotyped through Christian history. Women have either been virgins beyond touch, or else temptresses and whores.
It would be crazy to say that all men are rapists, because they aren't. But it seems to me there is something wrong with a culture that produces so many misogynists.
Everyman, tomorrow at 10:05 on 1.
We'll be heading for Preston's Guildhall in 45 minutes for coverage of the 6th-round matches in the UK Snooker Championship. First on BBC One, proving that they really are paid by the word, Clive James and guest Ben Elton blow a garrulous raspberry at the world of television.